Hello and welcome to the wiki event. My name is Ariane,
My name is Sami.
and today we are delighted to have with us Ajuna team. How are you, Nicholas?
Hi, thank you both for having me here. Very happy to be here.
Well, that's an honor to have Ajuna with us today in this amazing interview. So we are going with the first question of the interview. The first question is, how could you describe Ajuna in just only one sentence?
Yeah, thank you. Ajuna is an infrastructure for decentralized gaming. That would be sort of the one sentence answer. Our goal here is to be able to onboard developers in an easy way in order for them to be able to create new experiences for Web3 audiences. And at the same time, we're trying to abstract the technology and the barriers of the technology to the end user.
Wow, that's perfect. So now you can explain in deeper all the technology that Ajuna have and how, for example, if I'm a developer of a new game, how can I build on the Ajuna network?
Yeah. So I think maybe a way to answer this is going a bit through a bit of our backstory. Initially, we as a team wanted to build our own game. So stemming back from, I would say, as early as 2016, 2017. Cedric, my co-founder, had first started experimenting by forking another blockchain. At the time, that was Dash. We found the way that it used masternodes for governance as very interesting. So we're trying sort of to build an infrastructure in order to be able to run the game that we were building. And constantly we were falling onto one problem to another limitation. And it was about 1.5 years ago when we discovered Substrate as let's say a programming language for the Polkadot ecosystem, and very quickly, in a way, we fell in love with it. The way that it was quite modular in its approach and flexible in what we could create, and so we decided to build upon the Polkadot technology stack in order to create, let's say, a layer 1 blockchain, which has a very dedicated and single-minded focus, which is to serve the needs of the gaming industry. So for us, in terms of architecture, everything starts with, as I said, our choice for our layer 0, which would be Polkadot. We choose that for the security, essentially, that it provides for us to be able to run our own sovereign blockchain. Then on top of that, layer 0 is where you will find, let's say, our own parachain. So for our Kusama network, which would be our sister network, is where we will find the Bayun network, and on our Polkadot solution is where you will find the Ajuna network. So there is where we can get sort of access to the persistent storage and things like that. And then on top of that, we have built essentially a faster layer, a layer 2 solution, where we implement technology called trusted execution environments, which we're using on the Intel chipset. And in that environment, what we managed to achieve is to have both a latency of about 250 to 300 milliseconds on chain, while at the same time maintaining privacy. Now, obviously, everybody knows that speed or latency is very important to have a smooth gaming experience, but a lot of times what is not taken into account is the importance of privacy, right? Imagine you and me playing a simple game of rock, paper, scissors. Now on the blockchain, unless you can do this in the proper way, I would be able to see your cards. So that would make the game quite problematic, especially if it's a competitive. So that's what we do in our layer 2 solution. So that's where we essentially close the gap with the traditional gaming space in terms of the user experience. And then always we have our forward-thinking research that we do. So currently we're going through our third grant from the Web3 Foundation. And what we're exploring is the integration of state channels on top of our solution. What state channels could potentially offer is essentially real-time gaming without sort of the latency. Obviously there, what we're trying to do through this research phase that we're going through to see how we can make sure that we're not sacrificing too much on the privacy side. So what does that mean for a developer? For a developer, that means that we are building a solution which essentially allows you to keep working on your natural environments, whether that's working on Unity, whether that's using another game engine such as Unreal. And then you can take the game, even the game logic and the game engine itself, and be able to deploy it on chain without the use of smart contracts. So for us, by allowing them to use palettes, we can give them a much more rich and customizable experience in Web3. So yeah, that's sort of, I would say, a bit more detailed answer.
Yes, so now can you explain us what are the advantages of building a game on the blockchain and not build it with the traditional methods?
Oh, that's a tough question. Advantages. So I would say, I think we're currently in a phase that it's still this new technology that is being introduced that most game studios and game developers have not figured out how to best utilize it. I think what makes sense as a comparative is when mobile phone gaming started becoming an actual thing. So that means that when game studios started looking at these devices and saying, what can I do with them? They had figured out that the business model of, selling a game as you do on a console, so for consumers to pay $50, $60 for a game, was not going to work on mobile phones. And that's where sort of the freemium or free-to-play models were introduced. So I think, although in the beginning there was a lot of kickback from the industry because they just could not figure out how a free-to-play model would work, it seems that the advantages or the possibilities that the blockchain can give are still being explored. Currently, what we're seeing is ports, right? What we're seeing is that people that have created Web2 experiences that are mainly adding a digital asset layer or an NFT layer to their game, and they're usually either doing that for fundraising, right? Sort of as using it as a fundraising mechanism, or more recently, we're seeing it also as a community building mechanism. So I think still blockchain games are quite basic in the sense of how they're utilizing the technology. But what we see as the main difference moving forward is that this will allow for business models that are content driven. So a business model which will allow the developers of a game to genuinely and only have to focus on the creation of good content rather than trying to figure out clever or nefarious ways to monetize their game. I think blockchain allows for this type of open world thinking. Obviously, the big, I think, bet of the industry and into gaming is that has to do with digital ownership, right? Because maybe not my generation. I'm 40 years old with 2 kids, passionate about games, but I don't have this, let's say, built-in need or want for ownership of my in-game items. But when I see at my kids and sort of a friend's kids, I see how much they associate and how passionate they are about their digital assets. And that's where blockchain can make a big difference in sort of solving this true ownership and true open movement of assets between different digital worlds.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. Having your own control and not paying for a game, and not having anything has changed. Only to enrich a multi-millionaire dollar company, more and more. So we have been watching that you are building on Polkadot chain.
Yep.
So you can explain why you choose Polkadot chains to build your project. What makes different from other chains, like for example the Binance Smart Chain?
Yeah. So there was a lot of different things that went into the decision, but the primary one was it was based on the technology needs that we figured that we wanted for the game that we were building. The main difference, I think, between choosing to build on another layer one, like so whether we would like to build on Solana or build a solution for Polygon or Near or Binance chain, is that because Polkadot is essentially a layer 0, not a layer 1, it allows us to make design choices which in other ecosystems we would not be able to make. So for example, one which we think is very important is how we use tokens or how using tokens can be used in our ecosystem as opposed to other ones. So if you were to launch a game, for example, on Solana, and your game had its own in-game economy and its own game token, then you are forcing your users essentially into a two-token system. There's always going to be the game token that you have issued for your own game, and there will always be the gas token, which is the native token of the ecosystem. So what that means is that, let's say that you have a game that is successful, that it's getting a lot of traction. That traction translates into generating a lot of gas fees, and those gas fees are filling up the treasury of the infrastructure instead of your own as a game studio. So on a Ajuna network, a game studio can choose to use, let's say, our native token if by design their game does not have one. But if their game does have a native token, then they can use that single game token both for their for usage inside their own world they have created, but also it can be used as the gas fee token on a Ajuna network, which in result means that your traction, your success, your gas fee token filling up your treasury and rewarding your community and your developers. So that was one big role for us. That's one big reason, which was the customizability and modularity of Polkadot in order to design a single-purpose blockchain.
That's amazing, Sam, from your answering. And what tools do you offer to a game developer, a new studio that wants to create a new game, such as, for example, the game engines, the technology behind Ajuna?
Yeah, very nice. So I would put them in sort of our solutions. I would put them in three main categories. There's the more infrastructure level solutions. So that's our Unity API, right? Which, as I said, because you don't have to use smart contracts, you can pretty much load most of the functionality of your interface in your game engine directly, which gives you a lot of choice. So our APIs is something which is very important. There's the Unity one, there's an Unreal one, and we're going to be adding more and more engines because we don't have a specific affiliation or need to be able to support one engine over the other. Each engine is built with different characteristics in mind and offers different types of potentials for games that can be designed on them. Then there's a lot of, I would say, modular components which we build in order to help game developers. So that could be from matchmaking to multiplayer, palettes and things like that they can use. So that's sort of at the low level. So APIs and tools in order to make sure that they can connect seamlessly to the blockchain. Then the second part goes into our products. So we are developing a few products which are there in order to support the game developers on their journey. So a good example is the one that we're going to be launching in the next 2 months, which is the Awesome Ajuna avatars. The Awesome Ajuna avatars are essentially an NFT collective game. Think about it a bit like the experience that you had as a kid with the Panini stickers, right, from the World Cup. That every time there's a World Cup, you get the stickers and you put them in your album. But the idea of the product is to be able to give it as a product to game developers that they can then create their own collections of in-game items for the game that they're about to release. And it's a community building tool, right? So that you can go out, you can reach a community, and that initial community that you're creating can then feed into the launch of the beta of your game. So we're going to be working on a few different products which are there to support the launch of the games, whether that's community building products or fundraising sort of solutions for game studios. That's the second thing. And the third thing that we do to support game developers and game studios is that when at their time that they want to go to market, that's where we open up our network of partners, community and investors in order for them to be able to have a successful launch of the game. So for example, that could mean that let's say that we have a game which is launching on a Ajuna network, and they need to go for fundraising. So we could make introductions to, let's say, funds like Animoca brands and things like that, which are investors in our company. Or we could connect them with some esports organizations, which we are creating affiliations with in order to support sort of the launch of the game from a community building perspective and things like that.
Okay, that's perfect. So, well, if any video game studio is watching us, so you can browse in the amazing Ajuna ecosystem, and who knows, maybe create an amazing game
Yes.
in your ecosystem. All the
Correct.
links will be in the description of the video, of course. And yeah, that's it. So, Sami,
Yeah.
I think that you have another question, Sami.
Yes, of course. We have seen that you have your own tokens, 2 of them to be exactly. Can you explain us the Ajun and Baju tokens and what are their functions, please?
Yeah. So that was this is one of the design choices of the Polkadot ecosystem in general. They have 2 networks. They have the Kusama network, which is their canary network or their experimental network, and then they have the Polkadot network, which essentially is the more mature networks that they have created. So for us, this is a really good setup, and it was part of our decision making in the beginning, because when you have to do game development, one of the most important phases is what we call the beta phasing, like the testing. So the way that we have created these 2 networks is that we see the Bayou network as that easy access, low barrier, experimental network that we want to be inviting smaller game developers or indie studios who may not even have, let's say, a full game in their mind, but they have just a concept that they would like to test out, or they want to run their beta for the game. So we see this as I said, that sort of really dynamic breeding ground for new ideas and new game developers. And then we see the Polkadot or the Ajun network as the mature solution where full games will be launched. Each network has its own token, and the tokens, in terms of what they do, right? They have the standard features of a Polkadot, I would say, token. So there's governance, there's staking mechanism, and there's locking mechanisms inside in that support the network. Now, specifically for Ajuna, as I described a bit earlier, is that this single native token gives you, so let's say that you decide to support the network either by providing infrastructure or by staking and locking. So if you would stake, let's say, the Ajuna network, you will get rewarded both in the native token, the Ajun token, and also by all of the different game tokens that are launched on Ajuna. So as I said, everything is sort of designed in order to maximize or let's say reward success or traction to the games back to the creators and the community that are creating this traction.
Oh, that's perfect. So thanks for the explanation of these 2 tokens. So as you mentioned, the Baju tokens is like you can host your own games, adding liquidity. That's amazing. So now we are going to see 2 amazing projects launched on your ecosystem. We are talking about, well, first we are going to talk about Newomega and later about BattleMox. So you can start with Omega.
Yeah. So one of the in one of our earliest efforts, we sort of went out and tried to reach out to a few really interesting games that we're seeing that were being developed within the ecosystem. Newomega and the team behind it, 101. So that's a space sort of battle type of game, quite traditional in sort of its Web3 mechanics. Hopefully we will see that come out over the next year. And then we have the second game, which is the game that we are building now in partnership with Gamepill, which is a studio from Canada. That game is BattleMox. BattleMox is a Hearthstone type of game, which also has a PvP, a player arena mode to it, which we are developing. And actually, based on BattleMox is where we're going to have the first season of the awesome Ajuna Avatars, our NFT product that's going to be coming out in the next 2 years, in the next, 2 months. So these are sort of so BattleMox is going to be the first game that we're going to have an open beta, and the open beta is going to be running on the Bayou network. And hopefully within the year, we're going to also introduce a couple more titles, which are going to, again, start on the Bayou network. And once they're ready, let's say or at a mature state as a game or final version of the game, the idea is that hopefully when we launch the Ajuna network, we'll have also a full game that's going to be launching in parallel.
About Battle Mox, we see that you have some NFTs now created. They are available for minting, or right, or not for now. You can explain it.
Yeah. So for now, you should look at them as in-game items, right? Not necessarily NFTs yet. So through the awesome Ajuna avatars, essentially that's what you're going to get, right? You're going to get sort of those first characters, those first cards that have a utility in the game. So by participating and obtaining those Mogwais through the awesome Ajuna avatars, it will give you exclusive access to the beta testing that's going to happen in the next few months, as well as a few other perks and utility that we've added to them. And obviously the idea is that, yes, eventually you will be able to take that sort of in-game item, in-game asset that you're using to play your game, let's say your character, freeze him, let's say in time, take a snapshot, tokenize him, create an NFT, or in any way you want to sort of say the same thing, and being able to take it out of our ecosystem and offboard it, let's say, into OpenSea in order to be able to sell it, trade it, whatever it is that you want to do. But still, we see NFTs more as in-game items, and that's how we're treating them. So the trading, selling part, it has a role, but we are focused mainly on the functionality that it can have inside the environment of a game.
Oh, amazing. So another question I have. So in which platforms will be available to play? For example, in Newomega, you can play on mobile phones and the web, while it will it be something similar, or will happen it's like a app?
Okay. So in terms of how we have designed the infrastructure, would allow for any game to be able to play it on any console. That could be from on any platform, excuse me. So that could be from a mobile platform to a PlayStation or Xbox game, all the way up to a PC game running. Now, specifically for BattleMogs, we see BattleMogs as being primarily a mobile and web-based game. We don't see it necessarily as a console game. There's Newomega, I think, is mostly a web game, but a few other games that we're looking into from partners from us, let's say, for example, from GamePill, these could potentially also be your standard console type of games that you would see on a PlayStation or a Nintendo.
Oh, that's perfect. So you will have all the information on the description of the video, all games, Ajuna network information. So now we are going with the next question. Sam, you can.
Yes, of course. Why would you build in Ajuna and not in other platforms? And I was thinking if you can tell us a special feature about Ajuna, like what makes unique this decentralized gaming platform.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that we're at such an early phase in this industry that I'm not sure how much competition is, to be honest. I think that there's a lot of different implementations or a lot of different ways to solve problems that we see. So I would say, if I have to put a few things out there, I would say, let's say Polygon or Solana or Forte.io, all of these things are different implementations. So Polygon is not essentially a layer one. It offers just some tools to be able to launch above it. On the other hand, when you go to the other extreme where you see something like Forte.io, it seems that they are offering a white label blockchain solution for studios. Now, specifically for us, it was two things that we wanted to take care of. We wanted to find a solution that we were not necessarily bound by having to use smart contracts, as we find them quite limiting. So the goal was to always create an environment that developers do not have to, learn new tricks just to be able to use an infrastructure, right? The second thing that for us was really important had to do, again, with what we described earlier. We're being able to create a token flow that makes sense specifically for gaming. So Polygon or Solana which are general purpose blockchains, have a design which is there in order to be able to apply for different industries and different use cases. And so that's why I think that for us, it's very important that we have that single token, which I think enables quite a lot of opportunities for game studios. One different in terms of implementation, what we do different of how we try to solve latency and privacy. So you see that the sort of ZK rollups as one way. We are working with trusted execution environments, but again, going towards the wet goal, right? Reducing latency and making sure that we can maintain privacy. So yeah, if you're somebody that really doesn't have as a studio or as a game developer any expertise in smart contracts or deep knowledge into blockchain technology, I would say that we're a good solution for you. If you're a game studio that is looking to really capitalize on some of the elements that Web3 can bring, we are a good choice. So that means that if you're looking to put more than just an NFT layer on chain, so if you're looking to put some game logic from your game engine on chain, again, Ajuna is probably the right solution for you.
Perfect. I think that's the thing that Ajuna is unique on the industry. And now we are going to move to an amazing characteristic of Ajuna, shared community. We have seen that you have a very active Twitter account. You have some games goal. Do you want to tell us something about your community?
Yeah. So that's one of the most fun at the same tough parts, right? Because especially gaming, it's all about communities, and specifically Web3 is about empowering these communities to be vocal and participate both in playing the games but also developing the games. So for us, we're trying to keep a good balance. What does that mean? That we try to be sort of quite open as people about who we are, what it is that we're doing, sharing weekly even what the team is working on, knowing that there's times that we can be working on something and suddenly we change direction or we see that something is not working. The other thing that we want to do slowly with the community is try to talk about and introduce these different concepts of Web3, but do it through gaming, right? So every week we started playing on our Discord channel. Just the team will play a video game every Thursday night, and we start talking about different aspects. We're going to move slowly to YouTube or Twitch, which are more broadcasting channels, so we can have slowly our community joining in. And really, we want just to give out the message that gaming is gaming. Gaming was the same when we were playing with our Nintendo Game Boys or our consoles in front of our TV when they were not connected to the internet. It's still gaming today when we're online with 100 people screaming at each other in Warzone. So the audience doesn't really change. It's the games that sort of evolve, and we want to be attracting that community. Now, the difficulty, as you know very well, is that at the same time, there's the crypto community, right, or the Web3 community, which is looking at gaming from a different perspective. Maybe they're looking at it from a financial gains perspective, or something that they can, capitalize on. Again, they have a space and they have a role here, but we are going to stick sort of with gaming as a message to our community and try to sort of build that out and trying to not educate necessarily about what the technology can offer, but talk with our community about what is the potential that can be offered with blockchain.
Yes, I think it's a wonderful community, and you can join it by the link that we have left in the description. Now, I have a question that if we want to help the platform, if we have any suggestions or any constructive criticism, we can help in some way, and if this is the case, can you explain how?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question. So for now, I would say it's still pretty basic but direct. You can always reach out to us in our Discord channels. It's the team ourselves, myself and Cedric, and the rest of the team are always around there talking to the community. I would say Discord is where we are most. You're more likely to have a meaningful discussion, right? Because as a platform, I think it's better for communicating. Telegram is where you can probably catch up on a few news on what's going, but it's Telegram is more as a chat rather than a community tool to really interact. But you can interact with us on both these for sure. Very soon, probably at some point between Q1 and Q2 of next year, we're going to introduce some new, let's say, roles for our community in the gaming community. So what you see in other projects, sort of like ambassador programs. So we're going to introduce some concept like that, obviously more towards gaming. It's not necessarily going to be what you see in traditional ambassador programs, but we're going to start opening up some roles, which are going to be for community members who feel that they can add value, whether that's in moderating the community or in more creative roles. We're always going to be finding ways that we can, give a voice to our community.
That's perfect. So you have been talking about Twitch and YouTube. So we know that there's amazing streamers seeing our event. So you can stream games of this amazing project like Omega, and I think that's So we have arrived to the final of this interview. It's quite an honor to have Ajuna with us. Thank you, Nicolas. You can say now whatever you want.
Yeah. So no, my pleasure for being and thank you for the questions. No, I mean for just as a last word, be sure to check us out at Ajuna.io. Very soon we're going to be releasing more information, both about the launch of Bayou Network and its subsequent listing on exchanges, but more importantly, we're going to be showcasing our first product, which is the awesome Ajuna avatars. So expect that in the next couple of months. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and obviously go join us on our Twitter accounts. I think that's where we have our most fun. Again, thank you both for having me on the show.
So and for us, thank you, and congrats for winning your activation on Polkadot. It has been recently, 4th of November. So congrats for you and your team. It was amazing, and Nicolas, thank you a lot. And for our listeners, see you on the next week of an interview. Thank you, Ajuna.